If you plan on building the best body possible without using drugs or steroids, there's a couple things you got to consider. In this video, I'll give you the blueprint to bodybuilding and strength training success. You'll learn everything from the special strength training strategies, the dieting, the little nuances in between, everything you need to know, the A to Z, from going to skinny to buff, basically any goal you may have pertaining to your natural potential. So if you're interested, let's get this started. Alright, so first of all, when trying to build a great body, you obviously need a program, you need a routine. You can't just go in and wing it unless, of course, you have a lot of experience and you've already built your great body. But I'm assuming you're not there yet, so you need a program. Right now, unfortunately, the most commonly used system of all time currently is the split routine. This is where you will divide your muscle groups into several different sections, right? So you might have the chest day, the back day, the leg day, the arm day, the shoulder day, etc., right? Now, the problem with split routines is that they were designed for drug users, because you have to understand that as a drug-free lifter, whenever you do a given workout for a given muscle group, the protein synthesis, okay, this is the rebuilding process of the muscle tissue, will only last for 24 to 48 hours. So in other words, if you hit your chest on Monday, it's growing for 48 hours, basically till Wednesday, and after that, it's going to atrophy for the rest of the week. You're not growing whatsoever. So you're losing out on muscle protein synthesis because of the split routine. Now this begs the question, how come so many muscular guys use split routines? Well, this is because they're on large amounts of drugs. You see, when steroids are introduced to the mix, it actually elevates muscle protein synthesis for more than 48 hours. So if you hit your chest on Monday, you're actually going to recover and grow for the entire week. That's why split routines work so well for drugged up users. But now when you're drug free, you don't really have this advantage. That's why I highly recommend a higher frequency approach, such as a full body training system. Now, of course, there's other programs like the upper lower or push pull legs, but these are very inconvenient from a time economy perspective. For instance, in the push pull leg system, you will be hitting each muscle group twice a week. It's push pull legs off, push pull legs off. However, you're in the gym 6 days a week. So it's a misallocation of resources, in other words. Same thing with the upper lower. You're in the gym 4 times a week for a 2 times a week body part frequency. Does not make sense. The full body training system is, in my opinion, the best program imaginable for building your body, because you're maximizing protein synthesis. Every 48 hours, you're going in, bang, bang, bang. You're hitting your body. It's done. No problem. It's recovering. It's growing. And also, you're getting more frequency with less days in the gym. So if you're in the upper lower 4 times a week, full body 4 times a week, you get 2 extra days to build your muscles in terms of muscle protein synthesis. So that's why I recommend a full body training system. The old school bodybuilders knew this, the ones that were not on drugs. That's how they built their physiques. Split routines are a very new phenomenon. I do not recommend them for the majority of you. If you're very advanced and you've built a great physique and you want to use splits, no problem. But if you're a novice, intermediate, basically you're starting out or you're like in the middle of your journey, I would stick to a full body training system. I think you'll maximize your results this way. All right, so next point. To build a great body, obviously, you need to focus on progression. You can't just be going in and winging it, just doing whatever the fuck you feel like doing. This is the same thing that you see in the gym, where guys, they look exactly the same year after year. This is because they're not focusing on progression. You have to realize that as a drug-free lifter, the only way to get big is to improve your strength. Hypertrophy is a side effect of improved performance, right? You see, a lot of guys, they like to divide things into sets and reps, right? But that's not how it works in the real world. The fact of the matter is this. After neural adaptations have ceased, hypertrophy will always occur. It's a fact. It's undeniable. We know this is true. There's tons of data that confirms this. You can do your own research. Exercise science majors will know what I'm talking about. But essentially, if you improve your performance in a given exercise, or you improve your performance over time, the muscles corresponding to that movement pattern will thicken up. So in other words, if you take your 135 flat barbell bench press to 315 pounds for reps, your chest, triceps, and shoulders will in fact get bigger. And that's the key right there. You need to focus on strength training progression. Now, in terms of actually making good progress on the strength training, you're going to need what is known as periodization. This is referred to the organization of training. See, a lot of guys, like I said before, I keep repeating this in this video, they keep winging it. They don't know what they're doing. They're going in, they're just blasting their muscle groups at super high volume, expecting them to make gains, and it's not going to work. A properly written strength training program, one that is used by athletes and successful naturals, is one that is periodized. In other words, you are managing volume and intensity throughout a given time period. I happen to use a system known as concurrent periodization. This is where the volume and intensity is managed throughout the weekly cycle, so you're not actually lowering volume and increasing it. It's exactly the same. And in order to prevent the biological law of accommodation, which is basically when an organism ceases to adapt to this environment, I rotate special exercises. That's how I program my training. But other systems exist. The classical undulating periodization style, which is the heavy, light, medium. You might look into the Texas method if that's what you like, or a classic linear periodization system, the old school linear periodization, where volume starts off high and gradually decreases. Basically, the intensity increases. These are all methods of periodizing your training. And a properly written strength training program will include periodization of some sort. If you are not periodizing your programming, you're really limiting how many gains you're putting on the table here. So periodize your training. Read a book in exercise science if you have to. You don't really have to. It's very basic stuff. It's all about managing volume intensity and exercise selection. So these things are very, very important. Next thing, in terms of the muscle groups themselves, a lot of people believe that the chest and the biceps are of utmost importance, and I have to disagree with that. I think it's a one-dimensional type of way of thinking. These are the beach muscles, but not really the mass muscles, if you will. The mass muscles, there's 6 of them that I like to classify. There's the neck, traps, shoulders, upper back, forearms, and glutes. These are the 6 essential muscle groups. By getting them bigger, you will look the biggest possible as a drug-free lifter. Chest and biceps, you'll look good from the front exclusively. You turn sideways, you disappear. You turn around, you disappear. And in terms of the legs, it's all about the glutes, really. It's not the VMO. The VMO will give you that sexy looking leg. It's going to give you that cartoonish effect, but it's not going to make your legs the biggest per se. Nor is it the outer quad sweep. Everyone thinks it's the outer quad sweep that makes your legs big, but no. What happens is it's going to give you the X-taper physique. We're looking for the V-taper. The V-taper is where your lat width is accentuated and it makes you look like a boss. It makes you look like a damn superhero, right? Not the X-taper. X-taper will come from outer quad sweep. So that's why you have to focus on your glutes. The glutes is what's going to give you the best possible legs as a drug-free lifter. So those are the muscle groups you have to attack. Stop thinking about chest and biceps. Think about the performance muscles. Posterior chain, man, that's the glutes, right? Glutes and hamstrings. Upper back, this is what gives you the mass in the t-shirt. This is what fills in your shirt. Neck, people look at you up front. They will be looking at your neck. If you have a pencil neck, you're screwed no matter what. Shoulders, that gives you the width up here. These are the 6 essential muscle groups. Stop thinking about chest and biceps. That's not going to make you look big, guaranteed. If you look at my physique, right? At my peak weight, I was 186 pounds at 5'5". You may not be able to tell this if you look at my shitty biceps, but when I turn sideways or I turn around, you see a beast right there. And that's where all the size is coming from. So train the essential muscle groups. It will make your weight increase, and you're really going to be a lot bigger than you actually are. So that's the secret in terms of muscle groups. Next up, in terms of developing these muscle groups, we need to use a specialized approach of high exercise selection. I don't think that as a drug-free lifter, you're going to make the best possible gains using a minimalist approach. A minimalist approach will work if you're trying to build a decent physique, a great physique, but to maximize your natural potential, you will need a multitude of special exercises. And this is where the concurrent training philosophy really comes in, as I discussed previously, where you're managing volume and intensity and you just rotate special exercises. This ensures that you're developing your muscles in every possible way. So I highly recommend that you stick from, like instead of just doing the big 3, for instance, or just having a few variations for a given exercise, ensure that you have tons of variations. Rotate different band tensions on, say, the bench press, mini band, monster mini band, light band, average band. Rotate between reverse band and doubled and non-doubled, right? That's one example right there. Overhead pressing from seated to standing, wide grip to close, pause to without a pause. You need to use every arsenal in your toolbox. Make sure there's no page that is unturned. You flip through all the pages, you're going to be all good. So don't follow a minimalist approach. A minimalist approach will only give you minimalist results. Trust me, a lot of guys that I see, they have great physiques, but they could be even better if they were to use a higher exercise selection approach. And also remember, the biological law of accommodation, which is when an organism ceases to adapt to its environment, will dissipate with high exercise selection. It's the infamous muscle confusion saying, which although it's not true, it's been found that your muscles actually can't get confused. You're tapping into other mechanisms. The joint angle, it's called specificity training, joint angle specificity, right? The movement patterns, the biological effects in the body, the nervous system, all these things will be modified when you use higher exercise selection. So make sure you use everything imaginable. Hit your muscles from different angles. It's very, very important. If you're trying to look big as hell, you want to maximize your strength. And I think you'll thank me in the near future. So that's all you really need to know about training. Let's discuss some dieting tips very quickly. Everyone thinks that you need to do long sessions of bulking and cutting. And I have to say, this is not the best way to build a body, because what's going to happen is you're going to end up fat, and then you're going to end up skinny, and you're just going back and forth. It takes too much time and resources, and it's really, as a drug-free lifter, you can't get really, really, really big anyway. It's kind of unlikely. So fattening up that much, the amount of muscle gained extra, say compared to a clean bulk, is not going to be that significant. As a matter of fact, you'll probably lose it from all the cutting that you have to do. So the smarter approach to bulking cutting, instead of doing that, use a moderate surplus, a 10% caloric surplus at the maximum. I do not recommend that you go above this. 20% if you want to speed up the process and you're really lean, but 10, 20%, that's the max. Do not go above 10, 20%. Same thing for losing weight, same thing for gaining weight, right? And if you're not interested in that, if you don't like bulking cutting, you can use special recomping strategies, where certain days you are in a caloric deficit and other days you're in a surplus followed by a refeed day. So that's what you'd have to do in terms of dieting. You don't have to get fat as fuck and then cut down for long periods of time. You just have to ensure that you are either recomping or using clean bulking, clean cutting strategies. That's the best way, hands down, for drug-free lifters who want to gain size. There's no point getting fat if you're just going to lose the muscle mass in the end and you have to cut for long periods of time. It's a misallocation of resources. Next up, we have the infamous body fat percentage. A lot of people believe that if they cut down to sub 10% body fat, they will look much better than ever before. But unfortunately, this is not true. What happens is that the only guys who promote this are either they're either the 1% genetics to look that good when they're actually shredded, or they're using drugs and not telling you about the usage. Usually it's the latter. It's usually what is referred to as a fake natural, where they're injecting low doses of testosterone and other combinations, special cutting drugs and drugs that retain muscle fullness, and then they claim natty. It's usually the case. But in the case that they're natural, I wouldn't listen to these guys' advice, because this is really the 1%. Like I said before, I was 186 pounds at my peak, 5'5". I'm a big dude, all right? But if I cut down to say 160 pounds, shredded out of my mind, I would look flat and stringy. You cannot grow into a show. This does not work for drug-free lifters. Anyone who tells you otherwise, they're very naive. They're noobs, or they're trying to sell you some bullshit product. They're just lying. They're fake naturals. That's what it is. They're fake fucking naturals. You understand that? So look, for drug-free lifters, my recommendation is 10 to 15% body fat if you want to stay on the leaner side, 15 to 20% body fat if you want to maximize performance for a given sport. That's the way that I would go about it. Personally, I like to stick around the 15% range. I think this is it's good because you're still lean and you're not fat at the same time. But yeah, man, you don't want to be sub 10% body fat. You're going to have erectile dysfunction, your testosterone is going to decrease, leverages go down, performance in the gym, work capacity, all these things will decrease if you get shredded. So never get shredded as a drug-free lifter. It's a really bad idea. If you think you're going to look better, you won't. You're going to look flat, stringy. You can't grow into a show. If you think you can grow into a show, and if you really want to grow into a show, maybe it's time you start entering the drug world. Or maybe you're lucky. Maybe you have a good genetics, but 99% of the time you won't have that. Literally 99% of the time. But yeah, higher body fat percentage is the key. 10, 15% if you want to be on the leaner side, 15 to 20% if you want to be a bit bulkier, right? Don't get shredded. And then finally, we need to, obviously, because with the body fat percentage, we're a bit higher than normal for a lot of guys. You're going to have to incorporate some form of cardiovascular training, because it's very important for your health. You don't want to die young, right? And it's actually going to raise your work capacity as well. In other words, if you can increase your, say, from 20 minutes to 60 minutes in a run, it'll be easier to squat. It'll be easier to handle a high volume workout session. So your periodization will actually be superior when you do it in this fashion. So I do recommend that you incorporate some sort of cardio. 20 to 30 minutes every day of low intensity is preferable. It's going to ensure the best blood markers possible. It's going to keep your work capacity high. And that's really how I would do it. I would not dive into the high intensity stuff. It's going to impede your recovery for the actual strength training. And what's the point of doing it if you use the same mechanisms as regular strength training? Why would you activate your anaerobic system even more? You might as well work the opposite, which is the aerobic system, cardiovascular, oxygen, that type of stuff. So cycling is a great tool, brisk walking, jogging if your knees can handle it. But that's really something that everyone should be doing on this earth. 20 to 30 minutes a day, low intensity, you're going to feel the best possible. So that's it, guys. Those are all my tips for drug-free lifters who want to maximize their training and their diet and everything else. I guarantee you that there's no other video like this that breaks it down to this extent. You follow every tip that I mentioned in this video, you're going to be jacked as hell, you're going to be relatively lean, you're going to be strong, you're going to have the body that you've always been looking for. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you want more resources, if you want my full training program, you can check out all the details at outalpha.com. But otherwise, this video will serve you very well.